And that's us live. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're really well. We're back as normal with the Wednesday night Purpose to Progress lives, and I've got my co-host on the podcast, the Purpose Over Profit podcast, Chris Dowdall, with me tonight. How are you doing, Chris?
Very well after a tremendous summer day here, Indian summer in Glasgow.
It's been brilliant, hasn't it? I made the mistake yesterday committing to Lauren that I'd take her to the trampoline park at Braehead. That's where I went to PC World to drop my laptop off. And then I picked her up today and I said, look, that's not happening. We're going to go to the park. It's gorgeous. Who knows when we're going to get weather like this again. So I think it's meant to be nice all week in fairness, but yeah, it'll probably be into autumn, the depths of autumn and winter after that. But also everyone kind of coming in, I know the StreamYard was talking about it starting at 25 past, but someone forgot to set the StreamYard up. So you need to set it up for at least an hour in advance. So anyone looking to do that, make sure you do it. But of course it can start early. So it's 8:15 as kind of advertised. So see kind of who's coming in just now, Chris. But it's good to have you on. I know we've got an episode out this week all about branding. What is brand? What is branding? And I just thought it'd be good for us to jump on a live and talk a bit more about it. We've got people in the group, and there'll be people that follow us both on LinkedIn. That'll be small business owners, definitely property investors in my circle at least. And I think there's a lot in that about creating a strong brand. So I don't know. I know someone we're hoping to have on the podcast soon, Susan Actimel. She's got a fantastic brand, Homes for Good, but doing property, well, I would say, in the right way. But she's definitely not the only one. I think we certainly pride ourselves, and we've worked with you about doing some, and I've done some work in our branding a few years ago for exactly that, because we want to be more than just a faceless landlord, I guess, try and be a bit more than that. So I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation. But I guess before we get into that, do you want to just give a bit of background as to how you got into branding? Like, what was it that, was it something you were always like, yeah, that's for me, marketing or branding and creative design and all that sort of stuff? How did you fall into all of that?
Yeah, I'll try and keep this short because people hopefully know this as well. So my background is I'm a trained graphic designer by trade, so trained designer. But when I was growing up, my dad was a printer by trade. So he never had his own establishment, but he always worked for somebody else. And he was always just used to being around the inks, being around the kind of sweaty men who are actually printing the papers, being around everything to do with that kind of stuff. So as a youngster, I'd go along with him and actually be involved in that kind of scenario and understand exactly how the printing presses work and the smell of the inks and everything. And from that early age, I was kind of hooked, to be fair. I kind of loved the kind of industrial element of it, the kind of the grittiness of it, the people smoking cigarettes. I mentioned this before, people smoking cigarettes beside the press rooms and all this kind of stuff. The really hardcore side of what printing used to be. And I love seeing that energy enthusiasm come through my dad as well. And then I started to kind of get into drawing. I used to be one of these kind of crazy young kids that would be drawing out the lines and be making stick figure animations and all this kind of stuff. So I really got into that kind of piece. And as I got older, my childhood friends started to veer off into different paths. Some became panel beaters, some became mechanics, some became whatever else because we're all into cars. But I think I've told this story before. I remember that, I'm sure it was like Colin McRae Rally or something like that. And there was a magazine. And on one side of the magazine, as you lift up the acetate sheet of paper, it put all the livery on from the Colin McRae Rally. And as you took it off, it removed the rally livery and it just looked like a normal car. And I found that tremendous. Yeah. While these guys are talking about the size of spoilers, I don't even know, actually, I'm going to carry on here. Size of spoilers, size of wheel alloys, is that what you call them? Alloy wheels, and all this kind of stuff.
Alloy wheels, yeah. Wheel alloys, yeah.
Wheel alloys. I was too busy looking at the aesthetics and actually how it looked and how it sounded and looking at the badge and all that stuff and how they all stood out. So from that early on, I kind of knew something there was going to be different. And then just luckily from there, I kind of just followed a path into becoming a designer, but that was through, I wanted to explore everything from jewellery design to fine art to all this kind of stuff, 3D drawing, everything. And actually from there, I found a path into an agency. I worked in an agency for a good 4.5 years, worked with massive clients, and then moved into where Darren and I met, into the corporate sector to kind of create an area for the company's own design function, but also like brand function as well, which grew into quite a beast, and then managing the brand with lots of other people and designers. So after that, just decided that I wanted to do something worthwhile with my life. And actually, I'm not saying that I didn't do worthwhile stuff previously, but I wanted to do something more fulfilling and show my kids you can have a bit of fun, work with good clients, make a difference in the world. You mentioned Susan Actimel, who might be getting on the podcast, about working with brands that are striving for good as well. So as much as energy is fantastic, and that's where I used to work, at the heart of it, energy is energy. So you're trying to sell something, that a commodity that everyone's going to be using, and you're trying to dress it up and make it all frilly and all fancy and all singing, all dancing. But at the end of the day, people who basically can't heat their homes at the end of the day, there should be energy available for them to heat their homes in the winter. And that's at the very core of it. People need to feel that they're taken care of in this society, and this is why I'm so grateful for stuff like we've got the NHS and all this as well, because as a society we take this stuff for granted. So that's why I stepped out and then moved into brand strategy, which I love the concept of. Actually, design's one thing, but it's taking that step back and taking a holistic perspective to say where you're trying to go here. Because brand is strategic, whereas marketing is all about tactical, about delivering what you're trying to do. So it's marketing short term, brand's long term. Where do you want to go? So that's why I love it so much.
No, good stuff. And like, obviously, I know we've spent a bit of time together in the utility space, and like, for me, it's probably a completely different path and upbringing. I wouldn't class myself as a creative at all, but it feels like one of the most stifling industries to be in for a creative type. So no, it's great to see you kind of out and kind of really thriving in terms of what you're doing just now. So,
but what I'd say that does is, as much as it was a stifling environment at times, at the same time they were doing tremendous stuff. So, I mean, the energy company we were working with, they were right into women's sponsorship as well, breaking down that barrier of what women can do. It was into football, it was into grassroots sports, community shinty. So
hydro,
all this stuff we were involved in, and SEC Sway, like all these tremendous projects we're involved in.
Might be able to guess who the utility company is.
But they were doing tremendous stuff, and we're trying to kind of make it associate a bit better in a regional sense as well, and make the brand easier for everyone to handle. So there's great positives, but as with any large organisation, you're trying to jump through many hoops to do something simple, and actually sometimes it's just easier to try and create your own path and do something different as well.
Yeah. No, it's good. So kind of bringing up to date, I know you do a lot of work for charities just now, Brand for Good and whatnot, but the companies that you're working with hopefully will be able to give some value tonight around kind of brand and branding, how you see that and what maybe people are not getting right. And branding, where do you see companies going wrong? And that might just be a little bit of a flavour for some of the stuff that we're speaking about on the podcast as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we gave the title of the podcast, probably not the best title, but it's sometimes what I hear.
And it was your title, yeah.
So people sometimes say to me, what is a brand, and really why should I care, or why should I give a flying F? So that's what we've titled the podcast. Why should we? What is a brand, and why should I give a feck, if you like the most polite term? Because people don't.
Chris got embarrassed the day after I created after we recorded the podcast and wanted to change the title. I'm like, we've already recorded it. It's in the can. But it's understandable. But it's true in the sense of, like, so let me give you my take on it. And this used to be my feeling. It's like, there's something that really frustrated me about seeing, particularly in the large corporates I've worked in, but big agencies come in, and it felt like there was a lot of people, a lot of chat, and even more money spent for a lot of stuff that maybe I just didn't quite understand. And I thought it was like money for old rope. I really did. I thought it was like this is a scam. This is a bit of a con here in terms of the money that's going out on budget to an external agency to create this stuff, which didn't feel like groundbreaking in terms of what they were doing. This wasn't, Apple or Utility Airlines or anything like that. I thought this was, so that was my feeling about it. So there is an element of me probably that was always like, branding, like, why should I care? Like, do I really need that? Surely it's just as simple as having a logo and whatnot. And I know for a fact that I'm definitely not alone in that sort of thinking. So I think that's why it's a bit provocative, the title, to kind of just drive a little bit of that reaction.
Well, you're right. I mean, I think, is it United Airlines you meant to say? I think
United, sorry. Yeah.
So airlines is a great example. So when you think about an airline basically gets you from A to B or A to Z if you're going to Australia.
No, it's Southwest. That's what I was thinking.
Southwest Airlines are fantastic.
Southwest Airlines, yeah.
So if you can consider the concept of air travel, you're basically going, get to the airport, put your luggage in, you get in an airplane, that airplane takes you to a destination. Simple. So if that was as simple as it would be, there will only be one kind of business opportunity for them because it'd just be one airline company. But when you look at it, you've got a breadth of options there, a wealth of options. So Darren, when you flew to Dubai, who did you fly with? Emirates, okay. So if the option was to fly Ryanair to Dubai and it was going to cost you maybe half the price, maybe just a slightly bit under, would you fly with Ryanair?
Definitely not Ryanair, no.
Definitely not Ryanair. So that gives you a concept of what a brand is all about and what a business and organisation is about, because people look at these organisations and they basically judge them alongside each other. So air traffic or airline travel is probably the easiest one to pick, if you like, because you're looking at something that you need to get from A to B. But then what does that experience do? Because when you book your ticket through Emirates or wherever it is, you might have an app with them, you might have an experience with them, you might have loyalty points, you might see how they dress, how they act, you might get on the plane. It's experience from when they greet you as well, from when you go to it's not the holding line, I've not been in an airport in ages actually, it's the waiting area, what's that called again? It's the check-in, the lounge is kind of check-in area, lounge, the experience when you get on the plane.
You must be flying Ryanair because you don't get along.
But it's all that kind of experience, and then when you're sitting down as well, what's the meal like? What's the seats like? How comfy are they? How generous are they with their food? How easy is it to get on with the people around you as well? Because they're all kind of at the similar affluent level as well, because they want to fly that kind of stage in their life as well. So that's why it's so important. You think about branding or brand, and that's when you compare these things. It's all these little things you do that add up, and that's what makes a brand. So it isn't just a logo, like you've said. Visual identity is so important. So the visual identity stuff like your website, it can be your imagery, it can be your photography, it can be the car livery you've got, it can be the small things, even we talked around, it can be what you smell as well when you walk into something. So it can be like if you walk into, trying to think, like a steakhouse, that's one of your favourite steakhouse, bad example, you're vegetarian, I'm vegetarian, but if you walk into a steakhouse and you love that kind of barbecue meat smell, you're going to remember that smell. Or if you walk into a patisserie, I used to love going into Patisserie Valerie. You walk in there and it's all the cakes you can smell as well. It might be the texture from what you can touch as well. It could be something to do with your favourite car. When you get in the car, it's got these kind of lovely little seats. It can be anything. It can be the taste, smell, or anything like that. And that's that overall experience. That's that visual identity you're driving as well. But then there's stuff, obviously, that you're probably not as controlling, which is the kind of intangible stuff, which is maybe the stuff like feedback or social media comments, all this kind of stuff that you're not in control of. So that's the difference between, that's kind of giving you a kind of overarching brief of what brand is and what branding's all about, and a kind of very easy levels of looking at air travel, if you like, where you can compare them both, but you're looking at from yourself, which one would you pick and why? And that's that subconscious decision you're going to make, and that's over time, it's all those impressions that you get made up on. So when somebody's delivering you a piece of branding, which is maybe advertising, it's all these little impressions you get, whether or not it's what they've said. You've maybe phoned up to book customer service and say, I'm not happy with my seat. They've changed it. COVID's happened. We'll move this. It's all these little impressions these incremental impressions that make a difference to you. And that's why you pick some other business over another. Whereas Ryanair, you're going to think, I've seen it in the press, they're getting written off. Whenever I phone to book, they're telling me, like, if you want to go for a number one, it's going to cost you this. You're going to go for a number two, it's going to cost you this. Who knows what Ryanair are going to do next? So all these little things add up. And that's why branding is so important, because you need to lead with the strategy first. Like in life, strategy is so important. It comes down to the very basic stuff. If you're going to go and buy a car, Darren, you're going to look at what do I need the car for, why do I need it, and actually what benefits is it going to bring me. If I'm going to move into a house, what's the area like? What's the schools like if we've got kids? What's the garden like? Where does the sun come over? So I want to be lying in that garden when it's lovely and sunny as well. All these little things add up, and we subconsciously don't think about it. That's you creating a strategy in your mind about what you want to do, and then you're building up the outcomes as well. So that brand is all about strategy. It's all about delivering what people want and giving them it when they need it as well.
Yeah, and it's something in there that's like, you can think about it as, when you say brand, it is a lot of, like, you could be thinking that it is a lot of talk, it's just logo, does anyone actually really care? But what you're saying is fundamentally ingrained in every touch point, every feeling, that you want to leave with a customer, whether you're a service-based or a product-based company. whether you're a small or a multinational, you're looking to kind of leave an impression, a lasting impression, so that when someone's thinking about solving the problem that your business can, or looking for someone to help them solve a problem in their life that your business can help, your name comes to mind.
Exactly. The thing about branding is it's quite important that people sometimes, and this is a bit controversial to a way, you can't fully control your brand. As much as you have brand managers in their brand management, that's to control the aesthetic elements and what's going out and what's been seen and what's been heard to a point. But again, it comes back to you inherently, what you believe in. So if I was to ask you, Darren, in fact, you've got a t-shirt on just now, what brand is your t-shirt?
It is Jack Wells.
Okay. And I've seen you kind of wearing that kind of little identifier, that kind of logo there before. Why did you go to Jack Wells?
They're probably pretty cheap, to be honest. They're pretty cheap. They're available. So the reality is, I'll maybe buy, if there's a shop in Silverburn, I'll probably buy close to that, to be honest.
Okay, cool.
Or Jillo buy me Clara. But there's probably something over and above that around. It's maybe quite young. Maybe I'm trying to cling on to some semblance of youth. So I don't know. They're quite similar to Hollister in that sort of way. It's like beach or, American kind of cool hip sort of lifestyle. But I think, to be honest, I see it as a t-shirt, and it's maybe a colour that I think that I'd wear. Okay,
there you go. So for Jack Wells, when they probably hear you speaking just now, they're probably thinking that maybe you've ticked a few boxes. They want to be maybe as affordable to a point, but still look a little bit more premium as well. So be considered in the same kind of marketplace as Hollister and all that, which is probably the more high-end premium brand as well. But to feel like somebody wants to feel young and they want to have choice as well, and to be ready for them and available. So that's kind of stuff they've probably ticked off, but the probably stuff they can't influence is how you feel when you're buying them, or how you feel when you like the colour, or whether or not there's actually other stuff in Jack Wells that you start, because I know Jack Wells sometimes has a name spread over it as well. So there's some stuff that you can't influence because you're a different buyer as well. And that's why it's key, and that's why whoever's listening to this this feed today, it'd be good to, or tonight even, it'd be good to kind of understand if people can even drop a comment in to say, well, what brands or organisations do they like and why? Because that will help us understand the mindset of people as well. So what's really important with businesses and organisations with brands is that you're already doing this just now. You don't think, if you've got a brand already and you've put the time and effort into the foundations what a brand is, that's fantastic. If you haven't, you've subconsciously created that brand. I mean, we spoke about the podcast about a Frankenstein brand, but sometimes these people in business will have a brand that's already pre-existing. It might be to do with a personal account that they're posting constantly. And that's important because at the moment, if you look at what you've got just now, you've got to be careful it doesn't look irrelevant. It's got to be consistent with the audience. It's got to feel relevant as well. And it's got to be overall creating some kind of emotional connection with you. So when I picked Jack Wells, that's probably not a great example because obviously emotionally you don't seem as connected to that brand, but there'll be other brands you're emotionally connected to. You mentioned giffgaff just before we came on, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I'm not even with giffgaff just now, but they kind of always stay front of mind for me. And they only did one thing. They're pay as you go, so it's a kind of fairly simple service in terms of, SIM only sort of deal. But what they'll do every month, if I'm on an 8 gig plan and I only use 6 gig, they say, do you know what? You probably only need the 6 gig next month. So we're going to just move you down. And I don't know anyone. I used to speak about this in various other careers, actually in similar sort of products, where I was like, wouldn't it be a fantastic brand message to be able to talk to our customers and move them down to a package that better suited their needs? That would be looking after our customers. Nah, that's not looking after the bottom line. And do you know what? There's part of that from a commercial point of view. I get it. I absolutely get it. But that shows a real lack in trust in your ability to be able to create an emotional connection with the audience, like with your customers. But what giffgaff kind of done to me, I will go back to them at some point. I'm waiting on my existing SIM contract running out, and I'll go and take a giffgaff SIM again, purely because that one thing. And there'll be hundreds of, I'm sure small companies around the world that are doing something similar now. But for me, that's them, within the UK, there could be loads of people copying them, but they were the first people that I connected with, and I went, no one else is doing that. They actually would rather not take a free £2 off me every single month. They just downgrade me and do the right thing, which I thought was fantastic. Like that's a great feeling that a company's looking out for you and kind of gets like understands you, so they understand the data and information that you're using, and they're trying to do something that actually helps you.
And then that's probably a different conversation around using the relevant data to serve you in the best possible way. But I mean, you've hit a nerve there, which is fantastic, which is all about. So when you think about brands, they're kind of weird. Nobody really understands what a brand is, but you've kind of got that perfect because it sits in the hearts and minds, it kind of souls of people. So that when they want to make a buying decision, they'll think, wait a minute, who's at front of mind? So you think giffgaff, even though you're not with giffgaff just now, you go with giffgaff. You go buy a car, you may think I want safety. People are telling you it might be Skoda's the safest car, but then you would see a lovely Volvo CRV and you're like, no, I like Volvo CRVs. There's something about that kind of brand that I really go for. So that's what's sitting in front of mind for you. That's the kind of brand you want to be with. And that's why it's so important to try and get that message right. And again, it comes down to, you kind of said it there as well, it's who do you serve? So for anyone out there just now who's got a brand or a business just now, it's understanding, marketing obviously talks about this, but it's understanding who you serve, which is so important. They want to know why you're here and what benefits you're going to bring them as well, and what problems you're going to solve for them. Because if you're out and you're a business and you're saying, right, okay, I'm going to solve X, Y, and Z problem, but you're not matching up to the right person, it's just not going to work at all. And that's where personas come into play. I mean, you've heard of personas as well, Darren, I'm sure. So it's all about creating a picture of a customer. So it's saying, right, okay, what's their demographic? Where do they live? Who are they? What kind of money do they have? I mean, what's their ethnicity? Do they have children? What do they like to do for fun? Paint as much as a rich picture as possible, because then you can actually see visually who you're wanting to target and want to give them the right message. And that's going to be the kind of emotional and social benefits you're looking at as well. You're trying to tick off as many of them as possible. So like for you, you're a dad of 2, you've got a dog, you've got a wife, you're a property investor, you're a transformational coach, you're an influencer as well. So all these kind of things, people might say, okay, if I want to target Darren, how am I going to do that? In fact, well, let's look at it. So you have a mobile phone contact. We want to try and influence Darren here. He's not using as much data. We know he probably splurges data at the weekend or when he's doing a Wednesday night call if his Wi-Fi's down or whatever else. We'll give him extra and then we'll give him less as well. So we're trying to solve his problem. Then we've got a customer for life. They've created a kind of following as well. And that's where, if you don't know who you're serving, if you don't know why you're here, if you don't understand what problem you're trying to solve for them, that's one of the biggest things in branding strategy as well. And what I like to call is like, the simplest term is sometimes, even if you get a bit of paper, you just simply draw a graph. Oops, can't even see that. Can't even see it. Got a bit of paper. But if you simply draw a graph, 2 axes, and you say, okay, top axis and right axis, what are they going to be? What is going to make me different?
They're X and Y for any statisticians like myself.
X and Y, sorry. If you look at the X and Y,
you're just playing that creative role beautifully.
But if you consider what makes you different, so in any organisation, if you're not different, you're going to just blend into everyone. Yeah. So you're looking at who do you serve, why do you serve, and everything else. Then you're considering from one aspect, on one axis, what's going to make me completely different. And on the other axis, how's it going to make me different as well? Is it going to be price? Is it going to be quality? Is it going to be the fact I'm going to revolutionise some new product? Is it going to be how I treat people? So with giffgaff, you could say that they're going to look at, we're going to be using our data so wisely that we're going to be able to change people's plans or roll stuff over. And then you look at the other axis, they're quite community-led giffgaff. They've got their community owned, they're quite out there with their tone of voice as well. So they'll say, okay, we're going to be at the top of that scale. We're going to sit in the top of those quadrants. We're going to be data driven, which is customer centric to make sure he gets as much value. And we're going to be quite confident about our tone of voice, which shows we're a community-led brand as well. So if you can find a different quadrant you can sit in with that X and Y axis, then that positions you in a way where you can be really strong. And sometimes what you can do, if you're sitting in a market...
So what are the two again then? So what's going to separate you, and then how are you going to do that? Is that right?
You need to find out to make sure you're different enough, those X and Y points change depending on what industry you're in as well. Yeah. So like for one example, I worked with a vegan food company, and they wanted to create as little as harm as possible with either food product waste or impact to the planet. And they also wanted to have a massive attitude. but not as massive as Brewdog's. Brewdog's got a massive attitude, and they've obviously had a bit of bad press recently. So he wanted to have a respectable attitude, which is quite ballsy, but at the same time to show that he could be fully traceable as to what everything was going into his products, so that anyone who wanted to buy his product could see everything. So that was his positioning, and everyone else across that medium for the research, nobody else was doing that. So it was an opportunity to stand out. And if there's no,
so that's coming back to strategy on that. Then do you think then, for people kind of going like, I don't need that, I don't need kind of brand support, is it because they've not taken the time to ask that question, like how do you differentiate yourself? Because that brand kind of flows out of your strategy, right? It feels a bit like those strategic questions around, well, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Where are you going to stand out in your market? I'm thinking maybe unfairly, but like your local joiner or plumber or something like that, it's like, oh, just stick a logo in the van. I don't need to stand out. People want me to go and fit their bathroom or repair their boiler or something like that. I'm just in and out. People don't care about that stuff. They don't need me to stand out.
Well, what I like to talk about is there's something called judo strategy, where you can take, so you sometimes don't need to stand out. If you're happy running the mill and you just want to be sort of an easy life, and at times that's okay. The danger is when the hard times come as well, and you've just kind of you're riding the crest of the wave and it's been simple as, when you're not standing out enough or people haven't trusted you enough, they're not going to remember you as well. So we talked about consistency in the podcast and being memorable as well. But what is important about having some kind of story, so there's different aspects to branding, but keep it really simple, is that you need to understand what either sets you apart, and you need to see what sets you apart, and you also need to look at your touch points as well. Understand your client touch points and making sure they're as strong as possible. So like for Jack Wells, it's going to be when you walk into that shop experience, it's going to be the in-service support from the team that are there. They're maybe going to help you with your whatever clothing you want. There could be an app that's going to help you if you maybe want to try it on at home, so it's virtual. They might sell you newsletters, send you newsletters, all this stuff. So for a joiner, it might be, okay, what is the differentiation things I can do? So if I'm a joiner and I'm going to somebody's home and I know it's constantly a mess and I leave an absolute ton of crap lying about, I'll make the effort to take that ton of crap away. I might even go back 2 days later and actually drop by and say, I'm going to drop by, just want to make sure everything's okay, I'm going to have a look at it, I'll give that a sand down, give it an extra polish, whatever else, I'll come back. Then another catch up in 4 months' time or whatever else. Or he might even offer you different options to say, option A is what you've asked me for, but option B is a little bit costier, but longer term it's going to benefit you as well. So it's being honest and understanding what are all the other joiners out there doing. Are they offering chemical products which aren't actually good for the environment? Could actually look at what products aren't harmful for the environment and offer that as a kind of, I'm saving the world, but I'm also saving the planet, but I'm helping you make your bit as well. So there's ways you can differentiate yourself and be different. Let's just try to be smart by it. And that's why I mentioned, when you think of brand, it's all about strategy, where you position yourself, how you're different as well. And then the marketing is basically how you get out there. It's like the advertising part, it's the creative part, getting out there and being seen as well.
Yeah, because I wonder whether there's this, just as you're talking there, whether there's we seem to always kind of run ourselves down in the UK, like a bit, particularly in Scotland, maybe even particularly so in the west of Scotland, like you're not meant to be shouting about what you do and be big and bold and, shouting from the rooftops that you're the best at this or whatever. We're kind of taught to kind of pipe down sort of thing. So I wonder whether there's something in that maybe there's a misconception about brand that you need to be one of the big guys. It's like, oh no, that's for them, it's not for me. But actually, what you've said is boiling right down to, it's just fundamental strategy. Like, what sort of impression do you want to leave with a customer? How do you want to stand out or differentiate yourself within a marketplace? You're going to need to, if you're going to have a business, you're going to need to compete in that market some way, shape or form. So asking these sorts of questions makes sense and can maybe feel a little bit more real to, all business owners, as opposed to, maybe a misconception around what brand and branding is. Yeah,
and what you've got to be careful of as well is that people sometimes dive in, and what you'll find is people dive in, they'll get a business created, they'll create a logo which looks fantastic, they might get it anywhere, and all of a sudden they'll basically get a business to run with it as well. But I mean, we spoke about this before, Darren, about process, understanding your process in your organisation as well. So you need to understand your own processes as well within your organisation and understand the touch points that we spoke about. But we spoke about even the cars and go and do a bit of research. So if anything, if you're going to go make a purchase, you'll make you'll always do a bit of research before you make that purchase. So you should do, depending on where you go. Because if you want to go and buy something that's a bit more premium, you'll go to that other end of the marketplace to go and buy it, or you might even scour the internet to try and get it cheaper. So even if you're going to go and start a business, you've got a business just now and you're not sure whether it's performing well, you always need to do a bit of research and look at stuff as well. I mean, I looked at that kind of, and I spoke briefly about judo strategy. The concept of judo strategy is that you basically look at all your competitors and you see, well, okay, what are they doing really well? So one might be, we spoke in the podcast actually about Blockbuster. So say at the time there was Love Film came out and they were doing at-home movies they could send to you and you had to send them back, all this kind of stuff. So what Blockbuster...
Everyone's been stung by one of those like you never send them back within enough days or something like that. And everyone's been stung back in a day.
But what they did is they looked and they went, okay, Blockbuster, bricks and mortar, you've got to go there, all this kind of stuff. So they were ahead of the time. They said, okay, let's flip that in their head. We don't want to have a bricks and mortar place. We don't want people to have to come here to us. We'll actually send them what they want and when they want it. And we'll get a subscription base so that we don't have to rely on them coming back for more. Coming in the house, coming in the bricks and mortar. So the idea is that judo strategy, you flip their strengths and you turn them into their weaknesses as well. So one might be that, going back to your joiner analogy, like there's 10 joiners that the person knows of, and each of those 10 joiners drive a white van, not very professional looking. So this joiner might turn up, might have fully branded clothing on, might leave proper business cards, leave a folder behind, drive a livery van, which I spoke about, do a follow-up call, all this kind of stuff, which goes beyond what anyone's ever expecting. But then the next time that person uses that person again, that joiner, they need to deliver the same experience. And that's the part which is consistency is crucial as well, because it goes back to that impressions. The more consistent you are, the more impressions you leave behind. And the more impressions you leave behind, the more front of mind you become. So when people think about you, they'll go straight to you like your gift gaff.
Yeah, so brands the kind of feeling you maybe want to leave with the customer, what people will think about, but the branding is about kind of applying that consistency over a period of time so that you're out there, or one of the ways that you would be out there where kind of you remain front of mind, basically.
Exactly, and there's also that's how you get to that point, and then there's that creating that sense of belonging to that person, which sounds a bit strange for a joiner, but everyone, if it's a joiner, tradesperson, if it's property investor, if it's transformational coach that you, Darren, I mean, I know one of your words is belonging to your values, so to create a sense of belonging is important as well, because customers don't buy brands, they basically join brands. So if you imagine, I'm talking about brands, it could be organisations or business, so if you imagine that joiner, that joiner's done a great job for my wife, and then all of a sudden my wife recommends it to her friend, and her friend recommends it to her dad, and then before you know it, it's that word of mouth, because they've got that belonging, they've got that trust element, and that's what you need. It's all about that trust. So that's why brand is so important and strategy is so important. You need to know basically what the competitors are doing. You need to see how you can be different from them. You need to see how your visual language will be different from them, which is all your website, your advertising, your logo, your photography, all that kind of stuff. And you need to understand basically who your customer will be as well, because then you can look at the touch points. What can you do different? What pain points you need to ease? So like I said, at the joiner, if he's leaving a mess, then he knows there's a pain point there. People get sick of that. He'll remove that. So it's all these little things that make a massive difference in our organisation.
Yeah, like I think we might have touched on it a bit on the podcast as well, just around like trades kind of jump to mind for me because kind of working with them a fair bit, but it's the old thing. It always used to surprise me, 10, 15 years ago, and like a brand new house, or flat, and I'm like, right, I need to put flooring down in the kitchen, or the carpet fitter comes in, fits the carpet, and leaves all the ends lying, and it's like, oh, that's just the way it is, and I'm like, but I'm going to need to clear all of that. Like, where am I going to put all this stuff? I don't have a skip. And there was just a complete disregard, but it was almost like I was in the wrong. So I got told like this is just the way it is, and actually it is for not, I wouldn't say all, but I always think it's like things like that, recognizing like if you're getting like a kitchen fitted or a bathroom fitted, you want to walk in and kind of feel that, oh wow, that's like absolutely amazing. You don't want to be going in there and having to spend the next 2 hours cleaning it just to get all the stew off the worktop and stuff like that, or picking up all the ends and try to ram them into your green bin. Like, that's not leaving a lasting impression of your brand. That's a positive one. So it's even just simple things like that. Like it could just be a simple thing like that that might push up the price for the customer, but it's aligned with how you like the feeling you want to leave the customer with once they've stopped working with you.
You're 100% spot on, because when you think about it as well, we put a lot of trust in brands when we bring them into our homes and into our lives. It can be anything from footwear to drinks to couches, anything it can be, even to individuals or tradespeople coming in. We're putting our trust that this is going to either excite me or delight me or whatever else. And if you're let down by that experience or anything else, you won't even just not buy it again. You'll tell people about it as well. You'll say, listen, I wasn't really happy with that service by X tradesperson, or I tried this new drink brand, it was terrible. And then that repercussions can be terrible for any business as well. And that's why people talk about USPs. Do you know what a USP is? Yeah, unique selling proposition.
Unique selling point, yeah.
So people talk about unique selling points, unique selling propositions, whatever else. But I like there's a kind of term that Martin Newman talks about, which is kind of unique buying tribes. So it's like flipping it, UBT. So unique buying tribes. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create a new area for customers to join your business or tribe as well. So if you think about your business, Darren, you came from a utility business, and now you've got an organisation just now. You've got an organisation which is your coaching business, property business as well. You've now got a tribe of people following you. You've got a mastermind going as well, so that shows that influence you've gathered as well. So you've got a unique buying tribe there, which will now come to you and they'll actually trust you as well. And that's what you're delivering. You're delivering that trust, that authenticity and everything you're giving them. And it's all these it's all this coming together. Everything you've done over these last couple of years are now coming together. And it's some of all these parts that are now reaping the rewards, because now people are starting to see that all the benefits you're giving them, all the rewards is the kind of content you're putting out there, the trust, the awareness, the coaching, everything. And that's what brands need to do. They need to constantly delight and not over-promise and deliver, but just constantly deliver and be consistent about it as well.
Yeah, so we've had a wee question in which it might be useful just to cover off just now. I'm going to put it on screen, but it's quite a big question, so just have a wee read of it. It's from, for some reason, StreamYard will just put you as an unknown user, but it's Dave. I know Dave. So he's a property investor. He's starting a property business and wants to know kind of what are the main aspects to focus on in terms of establishing a strong brand.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to take that? Do you want to take that on just now, or do you want me to pick that up?
No, it's a good point, Dave. Actually, so the easiest thing to do just now is to say, okay, is to understand why you have got into business, to into property. So you need to have a good story for yourself to understand why you're actually getting into that business. And if that story is good enough for you and it's good enough for your clients or property investors you think are coming on board, then that's a nice story you've got there. You need to work on it as well to make sure it's succinct. So what is your overall purpose going to be? Is it going to be to do good in the world by doing something with property, or is it going to just be making money? So there's a couple of basic things around strategies, understanding basically where you're going to be focusing on. So who your target market going to be? Is it going to be the likes of I can use Darren's example. So Darren went in, you did flips, was it first? No, not flips. I'm not a big into property. What was it, flips?
No, you never know. So I'm just letting you stumble, man. I'm just letting you stumble. No, so I mean, we're still doing buy-to-lets, to be honest. I mean, we've done some flips. We're doing HMOs. We're moving into commercial and stuff like that. But yeah, buy-to-lets. And I'd imagine Dave probably in a similar sort of space, from what I know. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly something in that in terms of like, well, what's the objective of the business? Like what you're talking about is the brand of you. So why are you getting into that?
Yeah.
What are your values and ethos, and actually look to try and nurture it into whatever the business is going to be? Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. What I was going to quickly cover off is, so there's understand why you're in the business, and those values you mentioned, Darren, are key as well. So does your values transfer over onto the business? Do you want to be part of the business? Do you want to be the face of the business? Do you not want to be the face of the business? Do you want to be under a different brand name, so it's not your own brand name as well? Like Darren's is Mila Holmes, so it's not under Darren specifically. But probably some of the simplest things is get a sheet of paper, write down who your main competitors are, and then actually go and Google them. Get them get your PowerPoint open, Keynote, whatever it is, and just stick their brand logos on there. Stick some of their content on there from their social media. Start to get a feel for what they're like as well. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be too similar to them, because the worst thing you can do is just jump in and be the exact same, because you're going to just blend in. Try and look at what they're doing and then think about what could I do different? What could I do to stand out? Is it my tone? Is it how I come across? How do I speak? Would it be how I look? All this kind of stuff. What colours are they using? It's all these kind of things that the psychological pieces that you don't think about, the subconsciousness. So get a bit of paper, put down the competitors on there, understand how they're sitting, rank them as well. What are they good at? What are they bad at? And obviously don't share it with them because that'll just put you out of business. But just look at what are they good at, what they're not good at, and then what they're good at. Then you go, okay, like, can I flip that? So if they're going to be investing in whatever else, and they're quite aggressive in their marketing, they're not very honest, they're looking at this kind of stuff, their style is over stylistic, they're quite Americanized or whatever else. Do I want to be down to earth? Do I want to be quite humble in my approach? Do I want to be grateful? Or do I want to kind of show that I'm a professional business? So first thing is looking at your competitors. And then next, thinking about who's your target market as well. Who is your target market? And then starting to put in that stuff around, like I said, how is it going to help them and what problems does it solve? If you've got investors coming on board, what's the story you want to tell investors? Is it the fact they're going to get a return for investment on X, Y, and Z? Or is it the fact that you're putting people in homes for the best of 10 years plus or whatever? You're helping an area regenerate itself by buying up these homes? Is it for creating better wealth for families? What is that message? And what is the pain point you're trying to solve? And sometimes it's actually looking at, okay, from a renter point of view, what pain points am I trying to help them with? From an investor, what pain points am I trying to help them with? You might have 3 different options there. It's trying to find the right messaging as well. And I'll do all this before you jump in and just create your identity or create your logo, because at least there you've got a kind of baseline for an understanding as where you're benchmarking yourself against, and that's so crucial, because you don't want to just jump in and then all of a sudden you're just talking like you're a new business, you're looking for this, looking for that, and then 4 months down the line, your tone of voice, which is all about how you speak and how you sound and how you behave, changes, and then your identity changes with that. You need to be consistent from the get-go. I don't know if that helps, Dave.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a bit of colour to that, Chris, because there's loads of things that came up for me that I just like. I think that would maybe add some colour, just because I know, like, in the industry, if you go like look at who your competitors are, well, there's thousands upon thousands of landlords that are maybe looking to buy properties, so there's going to be lots of competitors, put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think, coming back to the very last point that you made there about consistency and the tone of voice and language and things like that, I would say if there was a word that you probably want to focus on is consistency. And I wrote down building trust, and you could kind of, they could be interchangeable at times, to be honest, because if you're consistent, someone's trusting that you're consistent, like, by being consistent, you're going to be building that trust. You are going to be building trust in yourself, so and your business. So I would probably have a look out there in terms of seeing who you like, as well as who you like, your competitors, and what are the people that are doing well. Think about kind of who you're facing off against. The property market is like, I really struggled with this because it feels like, I would tell myself like it's not a real business, but I think that was a real wrong thing to be thinking. You're dealing with potentially estate agents. You're maybe going into people's homes directly, who you're potentially looking to buy from. There'll be a touch point. There'll be several touch points. There'll be trades teams that will maybe be renovating your homes. There'll be letting agents who potentially will be, the front face of your band for your tenants as well. So thinking about all of those touch points, consistency across all of that stuff. I see a lot of people coming out of courses, training courses, and knocking on the door of estate agents or whatever, or I hear that, go around for 4 or 5 months and then never hear from them again, or going around for a few weeks, and never hear from them again, or seeing a few months of Facebook ads and then never see anything again. So it's almost consistency, I would say, kind of being present would actually be a strength in the market. That's how I would see it, being consistent and being present. And that way you're kind of building trust up with the key people, I guess, across the industry. So I think that's probably a really a good bit of sound advice, Chris, but I think I just wanted to layer on top of that and kind of build on, well, how do you see that consistency? Because I know I struggled with that when we were doing a bit of work on our brand back in the day.
And you're right, consistency is crucial. And like I said before, it's understanding what makes you different and where the opportunities lie as well. So Dan mentioned touch points. We spoke about that. Touch points are crucial. But again, what touch points can you make so it's a delight for somebody that's going to be different, you can stand out and have a bit of fun with? So estate agents, I'm not privy to dealing with a lot of estate agents, but there might be something that you could do different with estate agents that not any competitors are doing. I understand competitors, there's lots in the marketplace, but you can normally find 4 or 5 that are in your kind of area of expertise. And Dan's right, peers. I do talk about peers. Who do you look up to? It doesn't even have to be in your industry. I say to people, look outside your industry. People might look at Elon Musk, you might look at Richard Branson, it could be anyone. It could be any of these big brands. What are they doing that you think you could learn from, and you can bring it into your business as well? There's so many parts to it as well, which try to get right. I mean, it's probably an off the table conversation. I mean, feel free to reach out and I can have a chat with you and give you some free advice. But there's an element where don't dive in. Just first of all, get some stuff down in paper. I know people talk about business plans. Business plans are great, but at the end of the day, they sometimes just sit in a drawer, which is sometimes the worst case. But we're all visual people. So get some stuff, get some screenshots of what these people are doing, get on a page, look at what they're doing, look at their style, look at their tone, everything, and just see how you can stand out.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. I love being able to get into an example as well. So I'm glad. Thanks for kind of popping a question down, Dave, as well. It's always good to have something to focus in on. But yeah, that's been really useful, Chris. I don't know. I think we've covered a hell of a lot of ground there. I don't know. Is there anything else you were wanting to cover off? It feels like a sauna here. Like you're talking about Indian summer. I've been wiping my brow of sweat for the last hour. The window's open here. It's like.
Well, just come back to Dave's point. Actually, just one last thing is that there's a sliding scale, which sometimes Dan, you haven't seen this. Is kind of new stuff I do, but it's a sliding scale where at one end you've got this kind of this end. Can't see where the camera is. It's slipped. At one end. On the far end, you've got the kind of messiness of a brand, the kind of the intangible piece that people can't fully understand, and then you've got one that's quite simplistic, if you like, that people truly get, but it's too simple. What you want is you want a little bit of the kind of closer to the simplistic, but not as close to the messy. You want a little bit of craziness in there, a little bit of fun, but you don't want it to be too simple, because if it's too simple, people won't get it. But 100% stand out, because you get bottom-up branding and you get top-down branding. Top-down is all about, this is my logo, this is how I look, this is what I do. Bottom-up is how you feel. That's how people feel. So when they pick up the phone to somebody, they're like, oh, I'm going to call this person. It's that call they have with somebody going back and forward. And that's that impressions. We keep on going back to it. It's all about impressions. That's what brand's all about. It's about creating impressions in the hearts and souls and mind of everyone that you work with. But that's it. It's just about creating that trust as well that you mentioned, Dan.
Well, I love the wee segue in there. I'm sure you've made a fantastic impression tonight, Chris.
Honestly,
how's that for a bit of cheese to finish?
No, but if anyone wants any advice or anything, just give me a shout, because there's a lot of parts to it as well. And it doesn't have to be as complicated as it sounds just now. Sometimes it is just getting a bit of paper. I mean, there's all these terms you hear about. What's that one? Jeff Bezos is like, your brand is what is the Jeff Bezos one? Your brand's what they say about you when you're not in the room. All this kind of stuff. Yeah. There's all these random terms and all that, and that's true that people talk about your brand and people think about your brand when you're not there. And what you want to do is try and leave as positive an impression as well. And sometimes, another segue is for Dave to a point, is if you're wanting to think about what your brand wants to feel like and the personality of your brand, again, go to a celebrity, pick a celebrity. Which one do you like? Which one do you not like? What are their traits? Are they energetic, outgoing, a bit kind of crazy, Richard Branson? Or are they caring, considerate, and loving, like, I don't know, can't think of somebody, Obama, who knows? So what traits do you want, and then they can be part of your organisation traits. But give us a shout if you've got a chat about it.
There's something in there as well. I'll just build on, because you ran this out, I remember, for us a few years ago, but you asked us, like, what are our aspirational brands? So who are the brands we look up to, like, outside the industry? So as well as you're kind of layering all this competitive stuff, who's in your industry? And you're like, so say if it's like Facebook, you could go, right, how would Facebook run a property investment business? Oh shit, like that actually causes you to just stop and takes your mind in a completely different direction. But there'll be something about whatever's attracted you to a brand that you see as successful or aspirational, or something that you would drive towards that you've got a connection with. So I think that's like a really positive thing to maybe ask as well. Like, who are the brands that you associate with and out with your industry, and then think about, well, how would they operate? your business, and there'll be things in your values that will kind of come through in that, in the answers to that. It's a really good exercise. But cool. So sorry, Chris, on you go.
No, I was going to say that it is definitely, and I totally lost my track of thought there. I was going to just say about the main thing to think about is it's the gut feeling people have of your organisation. It's that gut. So you can't control that piece, but you've got to do as much as possible to influence it when you can. So yeah, definitely look at as many organisations as you can and take as many learning points as well. But at the same time, you've got to go with your own gut as well. So at times you might get advice off people that this isn't going to work, but sometimes you've got to trust your own instincts as well. And that's crucial. And if you're coming up with a name for your organisation, maybe this is Dave, I don't know if he's got one already, but be really conscious. God, does he fantastic. But just about naming's massive as well. So you've got to look at trademarking issues, make sure it's available in Companies House, domain names, all this kind of random stuff. And if you want to become one day, hopefully a global brand, which is everyone wants to become, make sure it actually works on a global scale as well.
Cool.
That was it. Sorry.
A bit of governance there to throw in at the end. Good stuff. So how can people reach you, Chris? Like if they want to, like, who are you helping just now? Are you supporting small businesses still at the moment? And like if anyone's looking to reach out, how can they find you?
Yes, I'm working with small businesses at the moment. Actually, there's a couple of them. Like I say, we just launched a kind of vegan brand not long ago. There is a brand I can't really talk about. It's kind of like a CRM kind of brand at the moment, which is going to be coming live hopefully soon. Launched a rum brand recently as well, which is pretty cool. So if you want to buy a nice rum, it's called Brass Neck Rum. It's fantastic. Working with a lot of charities as well. A strategy call today with a national charity and working with a few Scottish charities as well. So yeah, just trying to do as much as possible now that the school holidays are back, which is fantastic. But yeah, you can catch me on LinkedIn, just Chris Dowdall. You can find me on my website, which is thebakersdozen.co.uk. I'm on Instagram as chrisdowdall_brand as well. So if you want to connect, any information, just feel free to give me a shout at any point.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would highly recommend you to take him up on that. You've massively helped our businesses, but you always throw questions that are just bloody difficult to think through, but are absolutely valid and always point you in a better direction. So yeah, no, cheers, Chris. I'm sure loads of people have taken value from that, and cheers for coming on.
No worries. Thanks very much, Dan.
All right, cheers. Have a good night, all.